From the soundstage in the digital media classroom here at Wellington High School, welcome to another episode of Dialogue with the Dukes. As always, I'm your host, Bill Berger, and today's episode is being brought to you by On Track Nutrition, located at 208 North Main Street here in downtown Wellington. Today we are continuing with our Thrive program and the Mind, Body, Spirit project, and today as our guest we have Miss Lisa Goodwin. She is an Ohio certified prevention specialist. So Lisa, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us today. Today we're going to be talking about substance use and unfortunately abuse amongst the youth within the Wellington School District, and not only Wellington but also around the entire area. You are part of LCADA, I believe.
I sure am.
And that stands for?
Well, it's an acronym for Leadership, Compassion, Advocacy. I don't know what the C means.
That's okay.
And awareness.
Okay.
You got me there.
Okay. Now, again, continuing with the alphabet soup here,
Yes.
You are what's known as an OCPS, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What is a prevention specialist?
Well, a prevention specialist is an individual who is certified by the state of Ohio to provide problem ID referral, meaning working one-on-one with youth, communities. We work with all generations, all genders, all community populations. We provide social and emotional curriculums in schools. We do everything to the point before a diagnosis or treatment.
Okay.
So anything in a universal, selective, or indicated environment.
Mm-hmm. Now, we know that COVID-19 has affected everyone in the,
Yes.
in the entire country,
Yes.
but it's especially affected the youth. In fact, I just saw on the news last night that unfortunately hospitalizations and deaths are starting to rise again with the variants of the COVID-19,
Sure.
BA2, 3, 4, and 5, or whatever all that means. How has COVID-19 actually impacted our youth?
Well, being an individual that works in the schools, I've personally experienced where we're seeing an uptick in the use of nicotine, which is a stimulant. Youth are using it in a way of, beyond socializing and experimenting. It's a coping mechanism for them. But in addition to that, we're also seeing where the accessibility to vape devices and nicotine is not there because of maybe hybrid learning or kids not physically on a school campus. Mm-hmm. So kids are actually experiencing withdrawal.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yes. And okay, I'm glad you brought that up because what are the symptoms of withdrawal, and is it easily recognizable?
Well, in regards to nicotine, it can be challenging for a parent to recognize it. A young person that's going through withdrawal is likely going to have an edgy mood. They could be real up or real down. They might have flu-like symptoms, headaches, dehydration, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the, for lack of a better term, drugs, because nicotine is a drug.
Sure.
What are some of the commonly used, or should we say abused, drugs by the youth of our entire school district?
Well, in Lorain County, we know, based on the data that we collect, that alcohol, marijuana, and nicotine are the three most abused drugs, or drugs of choice by young people. That has a lot to do with the perception of risk, because we know that two of those are legal. Also, accessibility is a lot different than it used to be when, Bill, when you and I were kids. And so we just know that those three drugs tend to be what kids go to. We do know with prescription medication, in Lorain County, we're about 8%, meaning 8% of adolescents will experiment or socialize with or misuse prescription medication.
Why are youth attracted to these substances? Is it peer pressure, or is there something else within the community that's causing this?
Well, I definitely would go with peer pressure. We know that that's still a real thing. But let's talk about social norms. I mean, you can't go to a sporting event today where one of these, or largely alcohol or nicotine, are not being, they're not sponsors, or they're being, marketed and made to look very fun and a way to interact. Also, that perception of risk. Kids today have a tendency to say, well, At least I'm not doing, there's nothing wrong with smoking because it's not like I'm doing heroin.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that rather, or that everybody does this. And then there's the curiosity aspect. Kids are curious creatures by habit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, wanting to see what is the hype? Am I going to have an effect? Or two, they live in an environment where this is modeled. And so they see, people that they love, parents, older siblings, friends, whatever. I think with all those factors, but how largely the industry, the alcohol industry and the tobacco industry really market and create their products, in colors and flavors and using celebrities. It's just a very comfortable thing for kids today.
Now, part of peer pressure that you brought up, and you also brought up experimentation. Mm-hmm. Now, how do those two relate within the youth? In other words, is it a situation where they're just trying to find out about something? Or is it, as you kind of already mentioned, the peer pressure involved? So how do the two interact?
Well, kids want to be accepted by their peers. Okay. They want to fit in. If they are with a peer that is comfortable and is using, let's say, nicotine, it's most likely that adolescent will also feel comfortable in doing it themselves. But there is a curiosity aspect, with these vape devices. Wow, if I vape this, if I hit this, it's going to taste like Swedish fish. So there's some curiosity there.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, when we come back after this message, we're going to talk about how the use, or shall we say also abuse, of drugs actually affect the youth of today, and also what parents and guardians can do as far as not only looking at the situation and being able to tell if there's a problem, or if there is a problem, how it can be counteracted. This is Dialogue with the Dukes.
Hey you, do you feel like starting your day off strong by drinking something healthy? Well, you're in luck. On Track Nutrition is here to help. They have a variety of drinks and appetizers, such as their protein shakes that contain 17 grams of protein. Even their waffles contain 30 grams of protein, and they are both less than 200 calories. They have products such as protein powders to put in your drinks, and etc. If you want to contact them, you can find them on their Facebook and their website, which are called On Track Nutrition, or you can call 440-529-3692 for more information.
We are back. We hope that if you have a nutritional problem or just like some information about nutrition and wellness, that you'll visit On Track Nutrition, located at 208 North Main Street in downtown Wellington. They have Herbalife coaches there that can help you with your nutrition and wellness for yourself and for the community itself. We've been talking with Miss Lisa Goodwin. She is an OCPS, or Ohio Certified Prevention Specialist, and we've been talking specifically about substance use and abuse within the youth, not only here in the Wellington School District, but also in the surrounding areas. So once again, welcome. We've talked about that. Now let's talk about how it actually, the use of these particular items, how it can affect the students themselves.
Sure, absolutely. Well, what we all know as reasonable adults is that young people are going through a major developmental time in their life. Between the ages of 12 and 26, a young person's brain is learning and achieving and sustaining milestones such as how to cope, how to communicate, how to thrive. And so when substances are used, depending on the substance, it has the ability to delay how some of those milestones form. Mm-hmm. But it can also form some poor coping habits for a young person. Let's say a young person is using marijuana because they're feeling depressed. Well, they're feeling depressed in most cases if they're using marijuana because there's been a chemical change now in their brain. The dopamine levels are not producing to the amounts that they should. So that right there would cause any teen to feel down or low. Sure. So now if I've got a young person that's using marijuana as a coping mechanism for their depression, that could also be inducing that chemical change. Mm-hmm. So now I have a young person, are they using marijuana because they're depressed, or are they depressed because they're using marijuana? Mm-hmm. Because the active ingredient in marijuana also causes depression.
Sure. Uh-huh. Well, in previous episodes, I believe we've talked about how a young person's especially within the students here in the school district, how the brain is not fully developed. In fact, I believe that in previous episodes, and maybe you can help me out with this, that you've got to reach an age of about 23, I believe, or so, before the brain is totally developed, and this can obviously hurt the brain in its development.
That's correct. Actually, we're actually going through the age of 26. I mean,
Okay.
back in our day, Bill, 18 was a level of maturity, and we, but with all the outside influences and technology and the fact that substances are being used more freely has definitely played a role in youth not maturing at the rate they.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier in the first segment of this episode, some of the signs. What are some of those signs so that parents or guardians can actually get an idea? Maybe we have a problem here.
Sure. And this can be different based on the individual and the household. But the first thing is awareness. If I have a young person who is misusing drugs or alcohol, I'm going to see a change in behavior, whether they become more secretive, whether maybe they had great grades and now their grades are starting to lower. Maybe they're not socializing with the same group of individuals. Maybe things that once really motivated them no longer motivates them. We're going to see also consequences as a result of that. So as a parent or a caring adult, we have to kind of sit back and look very broad of, what's happening here.
Well, now also in the first segment, we touched a little bit on the difference between experimental use and then going on farther down the line. So how can you actually tell when a student or the youth have progressed on the experimental use of drugs and gone into something more serious?
Well, certainly frequency plays a role, meaning frequency has increased, the use has increased. We also use a term in our profession in regards to tolerance, that adolescents' ability to absorb that drug now requires more of that drug because the body has built a tolerance to it. So they're using more, they're in more high-risk behavior. Now maybe they're stealing or lying or hurting other people around them to gain access to their substance, and they're thinking about it. It's very progressive and becomes very compulsive.
Well, your English teacher would be very happy because you just transitioned into what my next question would be, and that is, how do they gain access to these substances? Now, we know that cigarettes they can get, e-cigarettes they can get, but how do they actually gain access to all of the ones that are, shall we say, illegal or cause problems within the brain themselves?
Sure. Well, first of all, that peer group. That peer group is going to be a source, whether it's older siblings, college-age students, whatever the case is. But then the next step is home. Alcohol tends to be a staple in most people's homes. I don't know if I should call it a staple, but it's certainly in most people's homes. And so that is certainly a consideration. But also, though the tobacco age or smoking age in the state of Ohio is 21 now, there are still websites out there, and I don't want to promote these sites, but if you go onto them, the first thing they ask you is to verify, are you 21 or older? And all you have to do is hit the yes or no button. Most of these websites, and this is how kids are largely getting these devices on their own, is they get the device for free from the company.
Okay.
And now they've got the device, but now they need the material to put in the device.
Sure.
So kids are they're very privy in how to obtain what they're looking for, and they know who sells, they know who holds, all their lingo. They know.
Well, now I want to go into the parents and put this on the parents. How can parents themselves, how can they prevent the youth or students, whatever, prevent the access to or dissuade them to experiment and so on? How can they actually do that?
Well, it starts at home. It starts with education for parents themselves. It also starts with creating boundaries and having conversations with their young person in regards to what are the expectations. How could using drugs or alcohol today at your age impact your future? Sometimes sharing personal stories. Sometimes kids look at their parents and say, well, you did it when you were in high school, and look at you, you're okay. Well, it's a different different time, you know, and whether it's legal or not doesn't mean it's safe. So also parents need to ask questions. They need to be involved, but not in a way that's interrogative and aggressive, but in a way that, you know, I genuinely care. But once again, for parents, I do a lot of work with parents. Educate, educate, educate. Know what your kids know.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question that we didn't talk about, and I hope this, and you can feel free not to answer it.
Okay.
We know that medical marijuana is becoming more and more prevalent, and even the use of marijuana is being legalized in many, many states. How will that impact us here in Ohio and the youth of today?
Well, first of all, I'm going to go as far as saying there is nothing wrong with medical marijuana. We have it in pharmaceutical prescriptions in the form of Marinol. It's been there for a long, long time. What's happening though is there's this disconnect between the medical and being used in a recreational manner. There is no medication out there that's legal that is smoked. So I need to see more data. I want to make sure that this is, if this ever becomes legal in the form of a recreational like alcohol,
Right.
that there are measures put in place to regulate it. My only concern is that we forget alcohol is still the #1 drug in regards to accidental deaths, and so legalizing another drug that we know has the risks and the long-term effects that it does doesn't make any sense to me.
I see. Well, to wind this up now, again, talking about the parents and guardians, now you have, let's say that your student has progressed into, we're not experimenting anymore,
Yeah.
we have a problem here.
Yeah.
Where do they go? Where can parents go? Where can guardians go to receive assistance in order to, shall we say, prevent this problem, or nip it in the bud, using an expression?
It's a good,
Where
good
can
expression.
where can they go? Yeah, where can they go to get additional help? In addition to not only just saying, and we've talked about this in previous episodes before, if you've got a problem, and this is anybody within the entire listening range of this episode, we know that anybody can go to the Wellington Police Department, knock on their door and say, hello, my name is such and such, I have a problem. And we know that they can do that. But beyond that, where can they go?
Well, we know there's a lot of stigma in regards to asking for help. What I always encourage is start with your family, your grandparents, people within your family. Your schools are a huge resource. You have guidance counselors, you have social workers. Your principals have access to wraparound services in the community. They know what other resources that provide education, support, and treatment are located within that community. Sometimes though, individuals don't want to bring it to school. Contact your local doctor, your medical doctor. Sit down and have a discussion with them. And they can certainly provide, some referrals. Of course, LCADA Way is the largest treatment and prevention agency in this area, and we work with families and adolescents all the time. So if a person is faith-based, start with your minister or your pastor, but start somewhere. Don't continue carrying that secret.
Exactly. Well, just as a final thing, is there a website or something like that they can go to, especially with LCADA, that they can actually go to get some information about the situation?
Sure. If you're a Facebook user, we are on Facebook under Keys to Prevention.
Okay.
Also, the LCADA Way's website is www.thelacada.way.
Okay, well, that should easily take care of it. Well, once again, we'd like to thank Ms. Lisa Goodwin for coming in and talking to us about substance use and, unfortunately, abuse within not only the school district, but around the entire community. So thank you very much, Ms. Goodwin, for coming in and talking to us about that. We'll be back again soon with another episode of Dialogue with the Dukes.